Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Porsche week. Now, those of you with a little keen eye would realise this is a double car review. Now, this is because both cars are from the same year, same model year, with slight differences, so they weren't kind of worthy of doing separate videos. So I thought I'd do a bit of a longer video and kind of, compile them both together. So up first we have the Porsche Carrera RS. This is the 993 model. So as of recording this video, there was one in the used car dealer. That is one way to acquire this car for 221,700 credits. The other way to do it is complete cafe menu number 31, the Porsche one, by completing the late Maggiore circuit or race. That way you will get one for free. So not too bad. I'd rather get one for free than have to pay credits for one, but I'll kind of explain why. So the way we do this, we jump to the Nürburgring Nordschleife layout in its standard form, no tuning, no mods, none of that stuff, and we basically take it out in its standard form for a hot lap. Little mistakes are allowed in, but big mistakes are not. I know it may sound like I say this every video, but it's because, we get quite a lot of new people jumping in who may only be bothered about sort of a single car review. So it's kind of to, just explain what we do here, and then we'll go on to the high speed ring, modify the car as much as possible and take it for a hot lap round there, so we can kind of get a feeling for, the car in its standard form and the car in its most extreme form. So if you remember with the previous one, obviously I said it looked like a great callback to the original 911. Now this one is definitely a bit more extreme, a really pretty model of Porsche. The nice little rear wings back, few added bit of aero features at the front, and it's definitely a looker. Both of these models will be the same, but we're going to focus on the Carrera RS first. And yeah, definitely not surprising that it's got the typical Porsche 911 handling from around this time. Very, tail happy, bit of a what should I say, diva of a car. Definitely likes to get its rear end out and sort of try and mess around with you. And it definitely feels awesome when you nail the corners in this car. It's kind of a feeling like no other with these Porsches, and as we get further into the week, I'm starting to love these cars more and more. Now for me, this was the sort of last generation of really good looking 911s. In my opinion, they've got that original classic look. Now the Porsche after these pair, well, it's I guess referred to as a dark age really of the 911. However, that video might surprise you when it comes around, so be sure to keep your eye out for that one. But let's focus on the 993. Well, it's a great car. It's typical Porsche, naturally aspirated, and this model here, well, it's putting out quite a bit of horsepower really. 289 brake. If you remember rightly, that is around about, I believe, I want to say 39 more horsepower than the 92 model, I believe it was, that we've recently just tested before. So definitely an increase in the power, better aero, and it definitely feels like it as well. You can really sort of feel a difference. That aero definitely, although it's not sort of as crazy as the aero on some of the more modern cars, it's definitely doing enough to really make the car, I guess, a bit more drivable. Like, yes, it's still a diva, but it's definitely better in terms of its handling. As well, I did say the last car was responsive. Well, that has been upped again, so we are seeing that through the generations of 911s as they get more and more modern. We are definitely seeing them come alive and be a lot more modern and responsive. There's no sort of sluggish turning, the brakes aren't that sluggish. It definitely feels like Porsche's really gone into sort of a modern version of that classic recipe now with this model of car. So I just kind of want to touch on like the main thing of this car with me, and that is its looks. Now, I did kind of just say earlier that this feels like the final version of Porsche that looked like the original 911. Like, that shape is definitely still there. Them absolutely iconic sort of frog eye front lights are still there. That big rear strip across the back, still kind of there. And this one definitely feels not necessarily a callback to the original, you know, the first ever, you know, generation of Porsches built. This one feels more like a callback to the, you know, the turbo. So like the 81 turbo that we had, it feels just like a much more modern, non-turboed version of the turbo. And yeah, it definitely kind of feels that way too. It's definitely no slouch in its acceleration, its power, its looks. It just all kind of feels like a more refined version of that previous car, obviously minus that big insane turbo. So there's no turbo like here, nothing like that to look out for, because it is naturally aspirated. And yeah, I mean, here's another important bit: the sound design, absolutely gorgeous sounding car. So have a listen to this. So I know I keep saying this, but these Porsche 911s have such an iconic sound, and again here, Porsche just nailing it with the sound of that engine. You know, that exhaust note, beautiful. Cannot complain, and that is one great thing you'll notice when you're kind of hammering these cars around tracks. It's just the engine note, the sound of these things, absolutely amazing, and kind of adds to the feeling of kind of pushing around this fast, insane rear-wheel drive Porsche. As you can see, you know, still a handful going off there, but you know, that's another thing as well. With it being more modern, it feels like if you do make these mistakes, you can actually, you know, recover from them. I mean, I know like the original turbo, sort of the Widowmaker, and like I said, this one definitely feels along those lines, but it feels like it's just a bit more, I guess, civilized, but at the same time it's not. It's kind of really weird to describe it, and for me it's just like I said, the last real proper iconic Porsche look, feel, sound. Like, it's just a massive handful, and I love it. And this is definitely, alongside the turbo, one of my favorite versions. Now you're going to see a little bit later on, there is a sort of more crazy version. However, you're going to see that, you know, in terms of raw feel, it definitely feels like that, you know, the added aero and such that comes along with that car is, you know, working overtime, and it is genuinely making it feel, you know, a lot more civilized than this one. Definitely sort of has that raw Porsche feeling, although it's more civilized. It's not to the point of, you know, more modern ones in today's kind of landscape of basically Porsche 911s going from sports cars to more supercars, and it definitely feels like a, you know, a 1990s rear wheel drive, fast, powerful supercar that loves to get its rear end out. You know, there's none of that four-wheel drive keeping you on the track, and you know, mistakes are punished, so it requires you to really kind of stay focused throughout the whole, you know, the whole time that you're driving this thing, whether you're doing laps or, you know, longer races. Now this is going to be sound a bit, you know, of a weird one. I wouldn't recommend doing longer races in these kind of cars, because it'd be exhausting. You know, the amount of time, you know, of you fighting this car and trying to keep it on track, and you know, that rear end just kind of popping out and trying to punish you. I could imagine longer races in these kind of cars would be absolutely, you know, exhausting. When it comes to its top speed, though, it is definitely a massive improvement over the last one. I believe this one was hitting upwards of around about, I want to say about 170 to about 165, around that area. So much improved over the previous models when I'm hitting that long straight. And as you can see, we're coming around the final few corners of our lap, and the car, do you know what, apart from that one off, has behaved really. That's what, you know, that's what I kind of mean, where it, you know, it still wants to punish you, but it's definitely more civilized in the way of, you know, you can actually get this car you know, toned in and really sort of get it by the ears, and, you know, get it where you want to be. It's definitely not as punishable as something like the you know, the classic turbo, whereas if you went wrong, you knew about it and it would actually just throw you in the wall. So interior wise, well, I don't know really what to say. I feel like they're getting weaker. Now, if you remember rightly, the original sort of turbo, I absolutely, you know, loved it. Loved the interior. It felt sporty but classy, and I feel like this is kind of sort of a step up in the sporty department compared to the, you know, the previous one, the 92. But it's definitely just very kind of bland, and I don't know if it's just the kind of that 90s look that's, you know, quite typical of the 90s cars, where it just all seems a bit plasticky and a bit boring. But in general, you know, Polyphony again doing a top job, kind of, you know, looking, getting these interiors into the car and getting them pretty much pinpoint perfect. But definitely, you know, I absolutely love the steering wheel. It feels more racy, and you know, the interior in general looks sportier than the previous model, but it's still not kind of up to par, especially when you treat it to what you are today. Now, the individual sector times, they've obviously given us a 8 minutes 2 seconds .484. Now that is definitely no slouch. So where will this car come on our leaderboard? Obviously, we've seen an improvement from the turbo to the 92. And I said about the 92 feeling a lot more kind of classical. Now, is that added aero really going to actually boost up the standings? Now, I'm a bit shocked here because this car has gone along and topped the timesheet of the 500 board. Obviously, it's beaten a 2023 model that's not even to be released yet. Obviously, there's like, what, 28 years difference between the cars, and it's gone along and absolutely smashed it. So, pretty crazy, to be honest. I did not expect that. And that's just credit to the car. Like, it's an older car, but it's absolutely awesome. So obviously we had to go a little bit crazy with it, didn't we? Now this is obviously my modified version. I absolutely love the look of modified Porsches. Now when it comes to sort of sports cars, supercars that get modified, I'm not a massive fan of like these Tron looking Lamborghinis and such. I much prefer to see like crazy big wide Porsches, and that's kind of the style I've gone for here. So I've kind of give it that, you know, sleek but wide stylish look, and I think it looks absolutely brilliant. So onto the high speed ring we go, and sadly this car cannot be turboed. Now it may sound like, you know, to purists like, well, why would you want to turbo it anyway? Just for the extra raw power. Now again, it's going to have the same problem as the 1992 model. Without that turbo, it just cannot hit those extra high-end top speed. It's still fast, and it definitely feels, you know, much better in terms of handling than any of the other Porsche 911s that we've run around. So the 92 and the turbo, it's definitely a step up in that department. So these cars improving with handling as we, you know, put the mods on them. However, top speed wise, it's only a slight increase by around about 5 or 6 miles per hour over the 92 model. But it was definitely no slouch in the corners, and it looks absolutely awesome. Now, like I said, I've got a soft spot for modified Porsches, and yeah, it definitely kind of shows in the designs that you're going to see throughout the week. As we come around to our final few corners, that last corner is a bit of a nightmare for these Porsches. They seem to move around a lot as you're trying to get up the banking and get a really hard, you know, fast runoff. And it's going to kind of be not too bad so far. Is it going to hang in there? Yes. I've sort of had to kind of cut back inside a bit more than I'd want to, but we are going to get a decent run over the line, over the finish. I wonder where this one is going to come. Obviously the turbo in its modified version is the fastest so far, so will this manage to beat it, or will it even beat the 92? Let's find out. So yes, it has come above the 92 by around about 2.5 seconds. So that is a decent improvement to see within what, only 3 years. So that's between the 964 and the 993. However, that 930 with its insane turbo hitting 199 to 200 miles an hour on that straight is just absolutely dominating them. So it's, you know, faster than this by about 5 seconds. So that is the benchmark, and it's still yet to be beat. So what do I think of this car? Should you buy it? Now, well, yes, because I don't see why you wouldn't want to with these things. You could have one that's insanely modified and one that's more like sort of purist, and that's the kind of route I've gone with, you know, my Porsches. I've kind of got one each, so I've got like one for the pure experience, and then I've got a heavily modified version. And yeah, definitely an awesome car, but can it really hold a candle to the next car? So obviously this is a double car review, so stay strapped in and get ready for some more absolutely insane Porsche 993 action. So say hello to this. This is the Porsche 911 Carrera RS Club Sport, the 993 model, again from 1995. And those of you with a keen eye will realise this thing is running some of the most incredible aero I think I've ever seen on a car, and it's pure aero as well. None of this moving stuff. Just a big, huge wing, extra aero at the front. You know, it looks wide, it looks meaner, and it looks like it's ready to go racing straight out of the box. So let's go and take a look, eh? So let's give you some facts on the Club Sport. Well, it was basically a homologation special. It was based on the Carrera Cup car from way back in the day. There was only 100 of these, you know, ever made. And, well, it's putting, I believe, a little bit extra horsepower out. I believe this one's putting out 300 brake. Now, I may be wrong. I believe the game as well says it puts out 295. But when I've looked around, like, there is, you know, quite some good articles on this specific model. And I believe it's putting out about 300 brake from a 3.8 litre engine. So, no slouch in terms of power. And well, that extra aero, I think it looks absolutely incredible. Now, I again have two of these things. I have a, you know, this one, which is my sort of standard, you know, absolutely stunning kind of showpiece museum looking car. I don't put many miles on this, and then you'll see later on I do have my modified version. Now, in terms of looks, I absolutely love this thing. Seriously, I think this for me might be one of the ultimate Porsches alongside the original, you know, the 81 turbo that we had. This just screams, you know, extreme Porsche. Now, obviously, it is another 95 model. Basically, you know, they're based on the same car, so the Carrera RS and the Club Sport. There's no major difference apart from, you know, the extra aero, and this pretty much being a kind of one-of-the-kind 993 model. So, not many of these things, and it is a bit of a special one. Now, I believe there was, I would say a GT2 model. Now, I'm surprised that's not actually in the game. I believe they are actually, you know, different. I believe the GT2 was the most extreme one. But it's kind of cool to see, you know, a car that's basically not really represented or even very well known. Now, I've always known about the, you know, the GT2, which is just an absolute insane car. You know, a bit like the, I believe it's the R33 Le Mans. I think it's like the 400R or something like that. Those kind of think cars go, you know, hand in hand. They've been made kind of famous because of, you know, older Gran Turismo games and such. But this Club Sport, it's kind of just a bit unknown, and I feel like if people weren't around kind of in the 90s, like I was, you know, I mean, I was very, very young in the 90s, but I was still around, and I remember, you know, for years kind of seeing these things on like sort of like car VHSs and such racing around. So, you know, I've known about them, but I actually didn't know, you know, there was sort of, it's, you know, a one-off special. So I actually did a, you know, a bit of research looking into this car, like I always basically do. I kind of like to know about these kind of cars, because sometimes Gran Turismo doesn't tell you, you know, that much, and kind of looking at these little icons talking is, you know, a bit annoying, really. So I've, you know, I do my research into some of these cars, and I was just kind of surprised, really, that it's like such an underappreciated car. You know, in terms of like games and such, you know, you've always kind of seen either the, you know, the standard model or something like the GT2 model. So definitely awesome to see. And in terms of aero, I mean, I absolutely love it. Like, I feel like it's the perfect example of extreme, but still close enough to sort of like the standard version. So, you know, the GT2, yeah, it looks cool, but it's just, you know, very, very extreme. Where this, it just looks like a, you know, I guess like a top of the range of the standard model. Obviously, it's not that. I mean, this thing has a roll cage from standard, that extra aero, that big wing. In terms of like feeling and handling, you can definitely feel the, you know, the added aero, you know, going to work, and sort of keeping this car a lot more planted. To be honest, I felt much more comfortable driving the Club Sport than I did the standard RS. So yeah, definitely something going on here, and it's not just kind of in my head. Like, I actually felt it, you know, constantly throughout. You know, it is definitely, you know, doing something, that aero. So it's nice to see that Gran Turismo's kind of nailed that feeling of, you know, you put extra aero on this car and it will definitely grip more and kind of keep that back end in check. But in that way, it kind of takes away from, you know, just how, I guess, sort of prehistoric, or sort of that kind of old 911 feel that the more standard model gives out. I mean, obviously it's not a standard car, but you know, it's still the old one. Well, sorry, not the old one. The other model kind of gives that feeling of, you know, that classic Porsche vibe, while it's still, you know, a bit more civilized. This one, it just feels like it's kind of gone full civilized with all this power available. Now, it might seem kind of weird, like it's obviously a Porsche 911, they're incredible, insane cars. Now, yes, they are, but, you know, this one is basically based off of a full-blown race car, and now race cars don't go fast by going sideways, so it really does kind of translate over to the way this car feels. You know, it feels pretty much like a race-going version of the last one. You know, the grip's there pretty much at all times, the power is constantly there, the acceleration's there, the brakes are there. You know, it feels absolutely awesome. Now, you know, yes, it still wants to kind of get its rear end out, but it's definitely much more controllable, and it's, you know, not as extreme as, you know, the standard RS. So definitely a more civilized, sportier race car for the road kind of version of the standard car. So that's kind of where I sit with it. And in terms of sound design, well, have a listen. Again, it just sounds absolutely stunning. So when it comes to sound design, obviously it's based off the same car, so the same similar kind of engine sounds there. However, I feel like with this car, it's a lot kind of gruntier and deeper in its kind of roar, and I mean, it might just be because of the, you know, extra bit of power we've got there, but it definitely feels like it's, you know, a lot, you know, sharper and quicker to get to that big, you know, powerful grunt you get from these 911s. So absolutely awesome in terms of sound design, and I honestly cannot fault this car. It's definitely, you know, probably in terms of driving experience, it's my favorite so far by an absolute mile. And design wise, now, if you had to ask me to pick between, you know, the 930 or the 993 in this kind of form, which would I pick? It's difficult to say. I want to kind of say like the 930, because obviously it's sort of the original turbo extreme Porsche. However, I feel like this is just a much more refined version, and you know, the wing on this thing at the back, it's just incredible. It's kind of iconic in terms of like sort of more extreme, faster Porsches, and that extra bit of aero, you know, the extra lip at the front, and you know, just kind of how this thing looks like. It's got the classic Porsche styling. Now, I don't think Porsche, and it's going to be controversial, I don't think Porsche will ever make a car as iconic looking as the 993 and the 930 ever again. Now, I'm talking about modern Porsches. Like, yes, they look great. However, that classic Porsche frog-like look, you know, that big bar at the back with the brake lights on, are all just very iconic. And I feel like, again, this is kind of just the closing out of that classic original Porsche 911 look. And it's a bit of a shame, because obviously I think a lot of you will know what's coming next in terms of, you know, 911 reviews, and will know like the general kind of consensus. So I'm glad in terms of, you know, classic Porsche styling, we've got to go out with a bang, and there's kind of no disappointment there. So yeah, absolutely awesome car, and I cannot fault it at all. So interior wise, well, it's the same. There's no kind of real change. However, there is an obvious change. There's a roll cage around the thing. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of just feels sportier straight away with a kind of built-in roll cage. So I'm not going to complain about it in that sense. It genuinely does feel like a full-blown sports car at this point. It's as if there's no luxuries in here. This is just a pure sports car, racing car for the road kind of feel. I kind of wish they'd maybe changed up the you know, the steering wheel for this, you know, maybe model, put an awesome little Club Sport logo in the middle, or, you know, just made a bit more of a race wheel kind of look to it. However, the roll cage definitely does kind of add to that. So, you know, it's kind of the same as the previous one, just with a bit of extra sportiness there. So yeah, pretty okay. So here's the individual sector times, and overall we did a 7 minutes 55 12.016. So if you've been paying attention, this is the first Porsche 911 model to get within that 7-minute barrier. So pretty awesome to see that even in the same model year, a bit more of an extreme version was made and it shaved seconds off already. So awesome to see progress, and that's what I always, kind of want to see with these kind of cars. So it's gone top. So we've had two cars go top in the same video. So about just 7 seconds, just over 7 seconds, it's gone first place. Same model year, just an extra bit of aero and tiny bit more horsepower, and away it goes really. So pretty awesome to see. Absolutely awesome lap. Really enjoyed my time with this car. Now let's go and modify it to the extreme, eh? Well, for this one, I kind of thought I'd do it justice. With it being a homologation special, I decided, you know what? Let's make it a race car. Obviously, it's got the iconic PlayStation liveries from back in the day, the full Le Mans look. It's obviously got the big extra rear arches now, an insanely big wing. What more could you want really from basically a full-blown race car at this point? Slick tyres as well. So let's go and see what this thing can really do around the high-speed ring. Well, obviously we have basically the same mods that we did on the original Carrera RS. So there's not much in terms of differences. Basically, again, no turbo. However, this thing just looks more ready to go. Now, one thing I did notice with this car, although it's faster and should really have more grip, especially with that huge rear wing, I was basically fighting the car a lot more than the standard version, especially around some of the longer, more sweeping bends of the high speed ring. This thing liked to move about a hell of a lot, so I was kind of you might see a bit throughout the video where I'm sort of fighting this thing. In low speed corners it was actually not too bad really. Brakes working as they should. Top speed not too bad. I think I was topping out around about, I want to say about 175, 180. So it wasn't bad in that kind of sense. So it really is pacey. And the extra grip is there, even though you're kind of fighting it. It felt grippier, but I still felt like I was kind of fighting it more. And it might just be due to the little bit of extra output, but that aero is just insane. I cannot get over it. I think it looks awesome as we come out of the last corner and basically power down to the finish line. So over we come just now. There you go, a little flash of the lights. So absolutely love this drive. It really felt quick, and that's one thing about this car. It feels quick, and it felt much quicker than the more standard version. But let's see really where the car will come out. Now, it has come out above the standard version, and by quite a bit as well. So it's around about 3 seconds up on the standard 993 Carrera RS. So pretty insane really. A bit of a jump. Sadly, still beaten by the Volkswagen Scirocco R. I was kind of hoping this one would come along and really kind of prove my point that it's pretty much a full-blown race car. But sadly, it's still beaten by a Scirocco. So this is the end of the video. I thought I kind of double them up because they are the same kind of model. And they're basically a completely different. I mean, a lot of people kind of can't tell the differences between these kind of generations of Porsche, but it is a different model from, I believe, the 964, which is the 92. So I kind of thought I'd put them together and give them a real comparison, really. And it's definitely, the Club Sport is the way to go. And I feel like it's just one of the most iconic vehicles we've got inside Gran Turismo currently. So I had a whole heap of fun doing this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, I'll definitely see you in the next one. Don't forget, channel memberships are up. So feel free to join our growing list of members. We've already got a couple so far. Donation links, they're in the bio if you want to help the channel out. Don't feel like you have to. And I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers, guys. Peace.